about doing a lot of these is that we know what is wrong and how to fix it. So now we should be good getting in with Dixon Dedman joining us on the Instagram Live. We're going to invite the 2XO whiskey team in to join us. Hopefully everyone's having a good Thursday and having just a nice week in general. It's clearing up in most places. And we'll get Dixon on here in just a second. Go ahead and drop comments you might have or questions you might have for Dixon in the chat below. As we get into it, we're gonna go on a journey here, guys. So, hey, Dixon, how you doing, man? Nope, there we go. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
There
yeah.
we go.
I love technology. I'm so good at it. I'm so good at it.
Absolutely. But we've done enough of these things now. We know exactly what might be wrong and when it could be wrong. So now you can pick it up and get going.
One of these days they're going to figure out how to do this like where you don't have to do it from your phone that's connected to 9 million other things but whatever.
Yeah, we'll just be able to kind of like look at a screen on the wall and we can just join.
Yeah.
I'll just put a camera in my bar. We'll just go from it there.
I've got like 19 different things with cameras on them, and they all make it easier than trying to set something up with my phone. But
That's
whatever.
right. That's right.
I feel like I like a grumpy old like get off my lawn kind of man right now. But sorry.
Get your ball out of here. Well, thanks for joining. Where are you calling in from today?
No, I'm home. I'm in Kentucky in the quiet little 2XO office. So off the road this week, which is exciting.
And you're from Kentucky originally, right?
Correct. Yeah. I mean,
Kentucky born and bred.
I've never lived more than about 4 miles from where I sit right now. So
Oh, really?
I mean, some of that is has to do with the government or whatever.
Sure.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah. They say you can't leave this radius, so yeah.
That's it. That's it.
Only for tastings. Well, thanks for joining on. We have this interview series we like to bring on founders and distillers and partners who can kind of talk to us about putting a face behind the bottle. And I think you're pretty prominent out there in general, putting yourself out there and doing tastings everywhere. So we'd love to hear your story here. So the first question I like to ask, so we've all sat around a campfire having one too many drinks, and someone goes, you know what? We should go make our own whiskey. And everyone goes, yeah. We have a unique point of view. No one's had our point of view before. We should go try it. And it never leaves the campfire. But people like you take that and you run with it. And so we'd love to hear a little bit about your background and kind of how you started 2XO. And I know you have a couple brands before that too. So we'd love to hear some of that.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say a lot. Exactly what you described, like that. Oh, this would be fun. This could be exciting. That's exactly how I ended up in this industry,
Yeah.
and I never, um, I wasn't one of these people on this path, this chemical engineer path, or whatever. I grew up in the hospitality business. My family had an inn in central Kentucky, which inn sounds it always sounded weird. Like, yeah, I'm an innkeeper. What the heck does that mean? But
Yeah.
we had this great little the spot right in the middle of central Kentucky, and my family has been in this area for a long time, and um, it was a generational business. I was the fifth generation of my family to own and operate the
Oh,
business,
wow.
and we were kind of quintessential Kentucky. Started in 1919, and we were kind of a Kentucky hallmark staple. Country. I probably one of the few people in the bourbon industry that has won a James Beard Award, but for fried chicken, country ham, and corn pudding. It was for classic,
Yeah.
Kentucky cuisine. And but there's another part of my family history that included, the bourbon business, the distilling business. It was it's a really cool story. My great great grandfather was orphaned when he was 6 years old and adopted by his uncle, and his uncle at the time, was one of the major distillers in Kentucky. He owned three distilleries in Anderson County, Kentucky, which is Anderson County is where the Wild Turkey Distillery is, where Four
Okay.
Roses Distillery is.
Yeah.
Um, so he was actually, adopted by this uncle, and this uncle gifted him his own distillery when he was married in 1876, and became operational in 1879. And he was a pharmacist by trade. It was just a side hustle. And so he operated this distillery up until Prohibition, at which point he was shut down, and it never reopened. He and his son did it together, and it never reopened. And growing up, a lot of history. Family's been here a long time, and
Yeah.
I remember my grandfather always saying that the first thing that he was going to do when he won the lottery was buy a limousine. And the second thing he was going to do was figure out a way to resurrect the old family bourbon brand. And that just always stuck with me, that kind of, passion for legacy and history and whatever. And so, at one point I just said, hey, I want to try to figure that out. Like, that's something that I want to
Yeah.
do. And I kicked a lot of tires and ended up partnering with one of the greatest people I've ever worked with, and Mark Carter, of Old Carter Whiskey, so he kind of came in and helped me navigate some of the things that I didn't know how to do in terms of the legal, the labeling, that kind of thing. I had
Yeah.
um, but it was a passion project. I got here because I started a passion project thinking, if no one buys a single bottle of Kentucky Owl, I'll have a bunch of whiskey to pour at my kids' weddings one day. It
That's
was
great.
like, I want to be able to share this with my dad. Like, I want to be able to say, hey, Dad, I did this, and we can enjoy this together. And if people like it, great. And if they don't, whatever.
Did you go
Um,
find the old recipe or did you make new
no, no,
recipes?
no.
Okay.
There's no recipe. We were able to acquire the trademark. It was,
Yeah.
and I felt like at that point, I was really into bourbon. Really, and it was obviously a very different time in the bourbon world, and
Yeah.
and what was going on. And I felt like there was a lot of growth, but there was a lot of opportunity at that point. There were a lot of, for me, it was like, okay, what's something, a direction, a liquid direction we can pursue that, is unique in the space. And it was really wide open then. I mean, it was kind of the big guys, and very few were kind of doing the small craft startup things. There weren't it wasn't, at that time, it wasn't like there was a distillery popping up on every corner.
Yeah.
So we kind of, we got in early and had a plan, had an idea. I had a strategy in terms of what I wanted the liquid to be and how I wanted it to develop. But there was no, we didn't have like a 5-year plan, 10-year plan. I mean, it was the whole campfire, as you mentioned, like,
Yeah.
this would be cool. Let's do it, and
What was the hardest lesson you had to learn by doing?
um I have learned a lot of lessons, and not even smart enough to have not learned a couple of those lessons a couple times at this point. But um, one of the things that I oftentimes don't think a lot of the community understands, and there's no reason for them to. But that middle tier, that kind of distributor tier, I
Hmm.
mean, I can make all the bourbon I want. I can make all the bourbon I want, and I can have consumers that want it. They're dying for it. But this industry is so regulated that there's that middle tier, and so um, you know lessons, and is really, a lot of times around, um, how that product gets
Yeah.
from point A to point B or C or D or whatever.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. That's a hard one, especially in this industry. we work with all these producers like yourself to try to give product to our members, and you know where people will produce, what states are approved to distribute to and stuff. I mean, it is a difficult way to get some really good juice to people who just want to try some fun stuff.
Well, and I know that we're in a safe space here, right? We can say it wherever we want, but we don't make it any easier when every state has a different setup and different situation.
Oh yeah.
So, it's not like, oh, this is the blanket approach. So that is, and then with the disruption, the changes that are happening in kind of the distributor landscape right now. I mean,
Sure.
it's a very but that was, I was so naive when we left the campfire, right? I was like, hey, we're gonna make it, and then we just go find some retailers and they're excited about it, and boom,
If you
it's
make it, they will drink. I'm a
yeah,
very yeah.
and there is a whole lot more between putting liquid in a bottle, to getting it to shelf, uh, that makes things really complicated.
On the Kentucky Owl side, so we have a question here in the comments. So let's just jump into that real fast, if you don't mind. So,
Sure.
random Vodrams says he still has a Kentucky Owl Batch 4, the last rye. Any inspirations or thoughts on that blend, if you remember that one at all?
Yeah, I do. I mean, the the rye was such an amazing experience. Like I think that you know the move that I made. I do not regret it. It was the right thing for me at the right time. The opportunity to partner with Stoli Group and to work with them to build this brand, and to have a bigger engine behind us. But one of the things that it also did, especially at that time, and things are so much different now. They really, I mean, it's 180, because at that time there was so much available, but it was not 3 and 4 year old stuff. Stuff was, as the industry picked up, all of this amazing liquid just started like showing up on the market, and of course then it got crazy, and then there was nothing on the market, and now we've got the exact opposite of that, and it's different types of
The
liquid. But
bullwhip, yeah.
the rye and the way that rye came to us. I mean, I got a tiny little like 200 ml sample, or maybe it wasn't even a 100 ml sample, and it said, hey, these are barrels. This is 11-year-old stuff, but there are 10. I think at that time it's probably like 8, 9, and 10, or 9, 10, 11-year-old barrels of these available, and they're only going to sell this portion of them, and this is the price. And I was able to taste the stuff, mind you. The only information I got, it was that it was Kentucky straight rye whiskey.
Okay.
It was still in barrel, but it had not been aged for the majority of its lifetime in the United States. And
Oh,
so whoever owned it had, when we got to look and see pictures, they had spray painted the heads of the barrels so that you couldn't see the DSP number. You had no information. So I knew that it was 95.5 rye.
is that
I knew
legal?
that it
Can
was
you do that?
distilled in Kentucky. I knew that it was in new charred oak barrels. But in terms of who distilled it, that type of thing, I had none of that information. All I knew was I thought this stuff was fantastic. I mean, I thought it was absolutely incredible. And um, so I just, without any permission, I went back and I said, we want to buy all of it. And I said, and I'll increase the price by this much per proof count. I can't remember exactly the numbers, but it was so ridiculously inexpensive as compared to what it would have been 6 or 8 years later,
Yeah.
and of course they were like, "Oh, done," and and so the rye was this kind of, I mean, it was just this amazing and really fun journey. First one was higher. The second one, I took all this criticism because I came in with a much lower proof on it, which I still think is the most drinkable, dangerously drinkable of the ryes. The third one went high, and the fourth one I played with forever. And the fourth one I think is just like structurally the most sound of the four ryes, and it was the problem. I shouldn't say the problem, but one of the things is when you work with bigger companies who have a slightly different agenda.
Mhm.
Um, every time you kind of pick your battles, but that was when I was so frustrated over the pricing of that one because we were here with batch one and then here with two and here with three and then
Yeah,
four, and it was like I it really hurt me because I think that it was like structurally and pound for pound, I think it's just such an incredibly complex rye. One gets a lot of and one is great. But four, I think, in terms of like everything going on in that bottle, was just probably my favorite.
that's awesome. What I find fascinating in your story is like you not only went and created the first one, right? The family legacy, got the first one up, then you went and did it again. You went and started. It's like so. What was that inspiration? You mentioned Story Group, but like, what was the inspiration to create the new brand? What is that? What did that look like?
I again, I have nothing bad to say. I mean,
Yeah,
it. I think that my time in that relationship, that it was time for that relationship to end. We were just in different places and had different goals, different agendas,
yeah.
and I'm trying to lean on my media training to not say anything ugly. But so it was just time. It was just
Yeah.
time, and I won't. I've always been the hospitality business makes you, you're either a people person or you're not. You either enjoy, and I had just absolutely fallen in love with this industry, and it's such a cool industry because it's such a relationship industry. The relationship you
Yeah.
have with the consumer, the relationship you have with the retailer, the relationship that I think is often overlooked is the consumer to consumer relationship. This is an
Mm.
industry where everybody likes, people like to share. The bourbon people like to share. It's a community, and that goes all the way up. But I just, it was time for me to leave that. But I was just, and still am just having so much fun. I couldn't just, um,
Could just walk away.
go get a bank job or something.
Yeah.
So I also, I think that one of, I don't think one of the things I enjoy most about 2XO, what we're doing, and I'm not saying it's a copycat of what we did with Kentucky Owl, but you know, both brands when they were launched were, I like to think, kind of created with a very outside the box type mentality. Um, the leaning into the secondary new oak exposure with Kentucky Owl was something brand new in that
Mm.
industry. You had product prior to Kentucky Owl that did some finishing with, whether it was wine barrels or port barrels or sherry barrels or things like that. But I was really the first to lean into the double barreling, and then really kind of one of I'm not saying the first, but one of the first to lean into kind of building a blending program rather than this is our mash bill, this is our
Yeah.
recipe. It was kind of, and I think that served the brand really well because we were kind of a new take on things. And then
Yeah.
with 2XO, building an entire brand around secondary new charred oak exposure, building, not like we have one product that's double oaked, but the whole thing is double oaked, and
Yeah.
then incorporating added elements of secondary, different char levels on the second barreling, and creating the whole chain insertion program that I worked on. I always kind of like the idea that we're we are coloring with inside the lines
Sure.
of Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey. I just like to try to find ways to use a different color crayon than everybody else, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so like, when I think about the bourbon aisle, right? You go to a store, you walk down, and there's a lot of options there, right? You see a lot of things. So, talk to us about your strategy to make 2XO not just stand out on shelf, but stand out from like a consumer perception standpoint, right? Like how do you differentiate your product to make it special in the marketplace and different from what else is out there?
Yeah, I mean, again, this industry, the rising tide raises all ships, right? Like um, doesn't matter what you have, how great your product is, how great your packaging is. Um, if it's in the bourbon aisle, but no one's going to the bourbon aisle, then you're in trouble, right?
Yeah.
From a look and feel perspective, it was very important to me to kind of go away from the very kind of heritage play that we did with Kentucky Owl. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but I feel like uh, as we grew Kentucky Owl, there was a lot. Everybody was kind of coming in. This is an old label that's being resurrected. This is an old brand. This every bottle started to look like it needed to, have once been on the back bar tombstone or whatever. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I mean, mine was very authentic.
Yeah.
So, my thought with 2XO was to make it very simple, very clean, but much more modern and kind of uh, not only elegant but kind of simple in terms of not a whole lot of you know old English script and wordy and just simple. I mean, 2XO stands for two times oak, and that just means that everything in there is. So that was part of it. But from the liquid perspective and the product perspective, I'm admittedly, and I say this a lot, like I'm not a tasting note guy. Like I'm not a I'm not interested in having to talk to you about notes of giraffe hoof and toasted, fence
I'm so
post
relieved.
yeah.
I'm terrible at that.
Um, and so as I continued to identify what I wanted to create, what I liked. Um, I always come back to mouthfeel first, and kind of weight, viscosity, mouthfeel, but also complexity. I love all, a lot of bourbons. But I tend to find the ones that are relatively one dimensional on the palate to just kind of leave me wanting more. I'm not a huge They're wonderful, but I'm not a huge weeded bourbon guy because while I love the initial sweetness and that front of the palate sensation, I'm always looking for that finish, that spice,
Yeah.
and so what I found as I started to work through what I had available to build 2XO out of was um, a lot of barrels, a lot of, all our barrels had this higher rye content, this great kind of long spicy finish to them, and so they worked perfectly to incorporate more oak exposure into that process to draw them forward, so that you have this transition from sweet on the front to savory in the middle and spice in the back, so that you're tasting things. Even the
I love
American oak
that.
at 92 proof, there's this movement across the palate, so it starts up front and it transitions to the back. And so the idea with 2XO is they're not, all the time, it's like, why don't you make anything hazmat? It's like, well, because you don't, it's really hard unless it's a 20-year-old product to have a hazmat thing that's actually uh has some nuance to it.
Yeah.
And that's with 2XO, I'm really trying to build these whiskeys with good mouthfeel, good viscosity, and then good movement across the different portions of the palate. So
Yeah.
that's the goal. That probably sounds really lame and whatever, but
No,
um,
man, it's got like I feel like that's what we want to understand. Like, what was the story you wanted to tell? How do you bring that through? And you know, it's one thing to sit down at a barrel and just start tasting stuff and be like, oh yeah, I like the notes of cherry or whatever it is. But like, I love the idea of an experience going from front to back, right? Like you were looking for something that would roll back and would coat and how that sort of story told. I'm curious about how you position the 2XO, um, the what do you call the series? This is the the vinyl blend, but the
yeah, well,
series.
it's interesting. I don't know. I think we're on like the third or fourth name of that series. Like,
Yeah,
um, we keep giving it a name, and somebody owns the trademark to that name, and they're like, "Oh, no big deal. You can use it," because they're like, "You're not going to be around for very long." And then we have some success, and they're like, "Actually, no more, no mas." So. Currently, if you look at the vinyl blend, it says Icon Series, but
icon. That's the word. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yes.
Yeah, so positioning the report with the icon series and then the gem series. So how do you
Mhm.
distinguish what's going to fall into which categories?
Yeah, I mean, there's some carryover. There's a little bit of liquid carryover, but with 2XO and designing it, it was the first time that because with Kentucky Owl, it was all LTO. It was all limited
Yeah,
edition, and which is a lot of fun and really cool. But that's that's just. I mean, there's no greater compliment than people are like, "Hey, I've got I bought the most recent one you got." And then it's sometimes a bit of a downer. They're like, "Yeah, I don't know when I'm gonna open it, or I'm
mm,
gonna save this for my kids, or so." Um, that the Oak series, the core American French, and now the rye in that, that is which have been amazing opportunities for us, especially getting into restaurants and bars and doing these partnerships and the cocktail programs and what bartenders can do with this stuff. And I mean,
yeah.
it's incredible, and it's but those are intended to be like full bodied everyday drinkers. Like, you have the complexity, you have the weight, they're they've got the secondary new oak exposure, they've got the transition on the palate. But I always call them our kill it on Tuesday, replace it on Wednesday bottles. I mean, they're
Don't
um
save them. Go use
right,
them.
yeah,
Go
just
drink
go,
them. Yeah,
and so, they're which has been incredible. It's been a great program. We just opened up a single barrel program for the American Oak. It's exclusively for on-prem accounts, so restaurants and
right.
bars, and
Yeah,
I'm bottling that at 100 proof, so it's a little bit heavier for a cocktail program.
yeah.
I can't keep up with. I mean, which is a great problem to have. But those are just the kind of the everyday. And then on the opposite side, the Gem of Kentucky, those are a lot of fun for me because I really wanted to create a 2XO version of what I think a true single barrel program is.
Yeah.
I think single barrel a lot of times, not everyone, not all of them, but a lot of times single barrel has become more of a marketing term than it
Yeah.
has, and so it's like, yes, it's bottled as a single barrel, but it only gets bottled if it tastes like every other single barrel that in this line. And so these are barrels that I select when I go through the blending process or tasting process. I say, God, there's something special here. Some of them are super sweet, some of them are very rich, some of them are very fruity, some of them are very spicy. It's a true single
All
barrel
across.
program
Okay.
because there is no continuity to the profile.
Yeah.
And that's been a lot of fun. We're also doing private barrel programs with that, and and mostly targeted to kind of groups and things like that. Not go drop them in a big retailer, but
Yeah.
most of that.
Private barreling kind of opportunities.
Yeah, and most of that's because it's like, oh yeah, cool. Y'all come to the office. We'll pick a barrel. We'll go have dinner. We'll, then you launch it and we'll have a party. And don't tell the people I work with that that's the mindset, but that's really the mindset. But then the middle tier, the Icon series. I To be 100% honest, like that's still the tier where I just love that work.
Yeah.
It's that's the kind of snapshot in time. That's the there's no, I'm going into this because I want to make something that tastes like this. You go into it with 150 samples, 200 samples, and you say, hey, what, I'm just trying to put together the
Yeah.
best bourbon that I can make out of what I've got in this moment. And that, all of it, everything that I've done or gone through, or from that initial campfire conversation, that, like, that's still the part of all of this that I enjoy the most, is
Yeah.
is the kind of scratching that creative itch, and following this path of how these things interact and how they build and how you build on them, and how in which direction they go, and so I, not that I don't, it's like saying I don't, I love one of my children more than the other, but that I think that Icon series, collectible series, the vinyls, the secret heads, all this, that those are very personal to me, because they are, um, there's like that to me, that's like a real expression. That's like a
Yeah.
real, I could have done 900,000 different things, and this is what I personally felt like was,
The best
the best
expression of that
expression.
movement.
and
Yeah.
and that's, so that work, I like to call it work. Like when I tell my wife it's work, she kind of
Well,
rolls
yeah.
her eyes, but
Someone's got to taste these barrels. I mean, it's
I
like
mean,
if no
they're
one
not going to
tastes
taste
them,
themselves,
it's right. AI can't do that yet. Yeah. So I've got
probably won't be long, but yeah.
yeah. So like I want to be able to get into it, right? So I've got the vinyl here. I
Mhm.
did also bring down because I knew we talked a little bit about it, but I have my I've got what is it? I got the sneaker. And this is actually my second bottle of Kiowa. I had one a couple of years ago, whenever it came out. I had it, and I killed it when we were on vacation. We were not in Kiowa, but we were at some similar beach location. I brought, and I was like, well, we can't leave a full bottle of this, so
No,
we
it's got to
drank that
go.
one for there for sure. So, but yeah, let's talk about vinyl. So we sent out this vinyl bottle to our Bourbon Explorer members this month for April. So we really appreciate the team making that happen for us. And I know that we've already gotten some really good feedback. Would love to kind of pour it up a little bit and let's talk through it.
Yeah, I mean, I will, funny, I say quick story, and you can obviously tell I can't tell a quick story, but vinyl is also really special to me, because it's actually the first whiskey, first bourbon I have ever released. Um, I should say, I mean, I did a couple, had my father help with some, with Kentucky Owl. I would bring Mark and Sherry into the fold as I got closer. But this is the first bourbon that, ever, that from start to finish, from the first sip of barrels through the finished product, I ever had someone else involved in the process. And
Interesting.
about almost 2 years ago, I was running absolutely ragged everywhere, and there was a young guy, family connection, that he likes to say I was mentoring him, and I don't know that that's the case, but he would come by, and we'd hang out. a big bourbon guy who was working for Michter's at the time. He was on the Michter's tasting panel, and I said, Seth, I could. You ever look for something that's slightly less corporate and a little more crazy, and I'd love to talk to you about that. And he's now my right hand man, and
That's
so
awesome.
this was the first blend, first bourbon really that I ever did with and that was this incredible experience because it was it normally all just took place right here, like it was all, even the notes I made are not legible to anyone else. They're just kind of my, and
Your shorthand to get it done.
right. And to walk through that and talk through it and incorporate, kind of, to just share that
Yeah.
was very, very interesting, but it's also something I'm super proud of and we're super proud of. And,
Did you
um,
feel like you had to like um did you find that you guys were on the same page, or did you find that he took your perspective to a different place than where you maybe thought you were going to go with it?
Well, I think one of the things that I found that was a lot of fun, and I respect him. I mean, I respect the heck out of him, and he's amazing. Uh, but we taste in different ways.
Yeah.
And so um, it it was interesting to, like, we developed a language, right? Like a language that made sense, from the way he tastes to the way I taste, which is, I know that sounds kind of weird, but um, it was, he would want to pull this thread, and I would, to me it was like, that's not where I would go with this at all, but we do it, and back and forth, and it was just very different, than me with, I don't know, some like Nas album playing and tasting a bunch of whiskey and going through, and
Is that your process? You put on some music in the background and you just kind of like lock in,
I
or are
just
you
zone
highly
out. There's
analytical?
music on, and sometimes when I come to it, I'm like, oh my gosh, how did it get to this or whatever. But no, it was just, but I love it. I mean, it's, having another perspective, and he, um, I give him credit. He drove, part of what I think makes the vinyl blend so amazing, because he kept finding and pushing for what I think is a very unique note in the vinyl blend that's not in any of the other icons. And there's a fruit note, like a tropical fruit note. I know I said I don't do tasting notes, but like there's this kind of, um, almost, I don't know. It's like a, in the middle, and it's just, it balances the sweet and the spice. It's a little
It's
bit
like more
more of
like
a muted spice.
a pineapple kind of note.
It's like a grilled pineapple kind of
Yeah.
thing in there, uh, and it's funny that, like, the three that you kind of have like yin and yang. Kiowa is definitely the kind of sweeter, richer front of the palate, very muted spice on the back end. Sneakerhead is the exact opposite. It's got initial sweetness, and then it's really heavily weighted on the back with a lot more kind of spice and finish. And then vinyl is this very balanced. It kind of just, you can follow that transition from front to back. It's very smooth across the, all the way across. So I think, vinyl is I've said this about that second rye. It's also almost dangerous, in terms of, like, vinyl's the one that if it's open at my house and it's like, well, I've only got this much in my glass and there's 20 minutes left in this show, so I'm just going to top it off. And it's
Yep.
like, then it's like, well, I'll just have one more and start another episode. And then, it's tough getting my kids
Three
to
more
school the
in.
next
Yeah.
day. Yeah.
Do you feel like, so when you release these, it's almost like an album release? I feel like every time do you feel that way? Like you're releasing an album, then you're like going on tour to promote the album? Like, is that kind of how you see these?
I, I, yes. And the marketing team, uh, makes that even more so. I mean, it's like there's a launch, and then we plan all these. Like we got to. Every one of them comes with a photo shoot. Like I gotta go, like put on a shirt with a collar, and shave my face, and um, but the thing, and this goes back to the Kentucky Owl thing. Is it's just so it's just so gratifying. I don't know if gratifying is the right word, but that people follow you on this journey, and they get excited about the next one, and they get
Yeah.
excited about the release, and they and the greatest compliment when you do something like this, where each one is different, is when people say, I love whatever. I love vinyl. I would rank it number 3 on my list. It's like, well, that means that you've tried all I mean, it's just
Yeah.
that, like people are excited to see, like, okay, what's next? What's the next one? What's it, um,
Well,
so it is
it's
fun.
interesting. You made that comment earlier about, people are like, oh, I love this bottle. I'm not going to open it. I'm going to save it for my
Mhm.
kids. And so, there's got to be a balance there between like, well, I want you to drink it, but I also really want you to treasure, right? So there's got to be some balance between like that place. Like if you drink all of it and no one saves it, you're like, oh, well, it's just gone. But you want to have that
Yeah,
space in the
and
consumer
that's
memory.
that's that's a hard, like, I love that people want to hold it, and I love that people want to drink it, and I don't, whatever. I will tell you that I people have been very kind to me over, and I'm very appreciative that um, all the support and all that stuff, and you get a great review from a magazine, or whatever, um, but to your point, when I remember we had released, um, I don't know, several years of Kentucky Owls or whatever,
Mhm.
and I got an email with a picture, and the guy said, my son Junior, he and his wife just had their first son. He's the third, and so I snuck this bottle into the hospital. My son and I standing in front of the glass room, looking at the newborn, or my grandson, his son. We toasted, the third generation with Kentucky Owl Batch 2 in a styrofoam cup that we stole from the nurse's station.
That's awesome.
And like, I don't, like, it's those types of, like, that's what makes you want to make another one, right? Like
Yeah.
that's, I told the story of the vinyl, the vinyl blend, each with the icons. Each one of those is kind of something from my life. This Phoenix blend. Yeah, that was more marketing team. I was like, that's a weird story to say. This is my rising from the
Your
ashes
rise.
blend.
Yeah. Got it. Yeah.
We did the Innkeeper's blend. We did the Tribute blend, the Kiowa blend. It's like, Kiowa, as you mentioned, Kiowa is because my family has always vacationed, and our family memories as a kid, and now with my kids, are at Kiowa Islands. It's kind of our special place.
I'll
I
pour some
did
Kiowa.
one.
Let's get into it. Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously the sneakerhead, I have a shoe problem. We did a lot of cool stuff with that, but there's one I did called the Tribute Blend, and my dad had a little health scare, and I wanted to make a whiskey with my dad, so I had him taste some of the final ones, and we settled on one that we like. And that's my family crest on the front of that bottle. And I tell that
On
story a lot
the
about,
on the sneaker one.
um, no, on the Tribute.
Tribute one.
Sorry,
Tribute.
scratch a few back. Um, and I'll have people now, and they'll say, yeah, that's, we heard that story, and I know you and your dad drink it a lot together, and so we made it a tradition, and we have a bottle of Tribute, and that's what we have on Christmas or whatever, and those kind of things is like vinyl. I've got a ton of vinyls, but it's a fun thing for me because when I
Yeah.
was growing up, my parents only listened to vinyls, and so we had all these vinyls, and it became a thing. Who picked the vinyl for dinner? My I got a bunch of my parents' old 70s vinyl, 60s vinyls. Now my kids think vinyls are really cool. They like playing vinyls. It's just a
I
fun
love that
thing
idea
that
though of
we.
like a dinner time song. Like, is there
Yeah.
a dinner time song that like triggers a memory for you?
Well, I mean, my parents were old hippies. Like, it was like if it was up to my dad, or he's listening to like Seals and Crofts, and my mom is putting on like, I don't know, Joni Mitchell or something.
In my head, I was like, in my head, he's gonna say Joni Mitchell. I knew he would
Yeah, I
say
mean,
it.
I mean, she was also big into Broadway shows, so we were either listening to like Andrew Lloyd Webber, or but what's really cool is that now you tell that story and people understand it's not like just there's a story behind it. And then I'll just get a message and it's like, hey, my buddies and I, we do a vinyl exchange, and so I thought it only appropriate to bring a bottle of the vinyl blend and
Yeah,
build this thing, and and now it's become and those are the kind of things that make doing each one of these really special, at least for me anyway.
yeah,
But
and the name lends itself to a situation, right? It lends itself to the opportunity to like, here's when to drink this. Um, it is amazing how much we assign emotional ties to a bottle or to a moment. You know, smell triggers memories, and so the strength of whiskey and smell triggers a memory or some memory you want to keep, like the drinking in the hospital. I know I set aside some bottles when my kids were born, down in my little area over here, but in general, I've tried to reconcile that with like, you know what, I don't run a library, right? So we're participating in it's called Bottle Kill May, and so I've lined up a bunch of my bottles. I'm like, you know what, I'm going to kill these in May, and one of those is my Kentucky Owl bottle that I've had for forever. I have a little bit left, and I've been holding. I'm like, you know what, it is time to let it go and have the last bit of it, and we'll kill it online. Maybe we can jump on a call for 5 minutes one night, and we'll kill it
I
online.
love it. I love Bottle
Um,
Kill May. I think that's a great idea, and it's good to do that a few months after sober January, so you kind of build your tolerance back up a
right.
little bit.
Yeah.
I get it.
My sober January really only applies to like during the day, so I don't really ascribe to that anyway, but
Yeah,
it's an occupational hazard. I'm sure you ascribe as well.
yeah. That doesn't really work in my business. That's for
Yeah.
sure.
So I'm into the what did I just pour? I poured in the key one. You mentioned the tribute one is the family crest.
Hmm.
And I never really thought about that when I saw it before. Now I'm looking at it like families don't have crest anymore. So I'd love to hear, has that been your family crest for a long time, or is that something that you guys created to like be
No.
part of the family?
Yeah, that's the Dedman family crest. We
Okay.
actually have we got the originals from I think five different. So there's the Clays and or not Clay, the Currys, the Goddards, the Dedmans, and the Bells. We have the family crests. I mean,
Okay.
we yeah. So I mean, it was really cool. It was a cool thing. My dad didn't know I was going to do it. And yeah, no, it was not a that's the real one.
So was that is that like on the inn as well? Like, is that at the
Those
inn?
were those were hanging in the end. Yeah,
In
we
the inn.
had
Okay.
like pictures of them or paintings of them in the end
Yeah,
or whatever.
that's awesome. Yeah, all right. So I poured up which one did I pour? I think I poured the Kiowa blend.
Kiowa?
Yeah. And this is just like you said, it's got that like darker, like fruity taste on it. Um, Again, I'm not good with the tasting notes. I kind of just I learned from just that movie Psalm.
Oh yeah.
It was like the biggest takeaway from that 4 years ago was like they just start talking. They just
Uh-huh.
start tasting and talking about what they taste. And so I was like, you know what, I can do that. I can talk all day long if I have to. And I'm like, you know what, I'm getting like that raisin and that like gingerbread kind of taste. I'm like, all right, I can hone in on that. I can play on that.
I do, I used to do all these tastings at the end. I would do sometimes as many as 10 a week. We were kind of this hub in the middle of the Bourbon Trail. And so people would come stay with us. And what I started to realize is they were going to visit all these distilleries, um, thinking I'm going to go get to taste the top tier products from all of these. I mean, I'm going to Kentucky. I'm going to get to taste everything that I've ever heard of, right? And then they come and you go and it's like, yeah, here's a little bit of vodka and here's a little bit of gin and here's
It's so weird. Like
our
I
everyday
had that
product or
experience.
whatever.
Yeah,
And so I just said, hey, I'm going to start this program where, we're going to do these ultra premium tastings. I mean, and what was really cool about it, especially, for a long time, was a lot of the distilleries were saying, hey, you're a bigger advocate for our high end product than we can even be.
yeah.
And so they gave me access. I mean, I was uh, Drew Colesbean, was feeding me, Willet wax tops back in the day, left and right, because we were kind of, this guy would say, "Where can I get this?" I was like, "Well, be at the distillery at 9 o'clock when they open tomorrow, and they'll have some in the cabinet," and so it is sometimes painful to think about all the stuff that I poured and but um, point of that was, I loved watching these people taste and work
Yeah.
through what they taste and the way people would sometimes talk themselves out of something or be afraid to say what they were tasting because it didn't sound like something that it or the tasters that were so memory driven, like this reminds me of the way that this lake house smelled in the morning, or I mean, it was just, it's like it's all so
It's all triggering, right? It's
so
all
many
pulling.
different
Yeah,
types of tasters, and you got the people that are just like, well, I like it, I don't like it, and but um I just, I love that experience of kind of watching people try to figure out or talk through, or I guess maybe have, develop the, after a couple pours of the liquid courage to actually say what's in their,
right.
in their mind or whatever. But
They find the trigger.
yeah,
Like, oh yeah, I taste that. But you know what I most appreciated when I was going through these bottles, and again I've been in the 2XO for a while, but like what I don't get off of them is really heavy aggressive oak, which is what you kind of what like when it's called double oak. Like, oh, we're gonna get a lot of oak on this, and that's not what you get. Like, you don't get it coming in as this overpowering oak. You have so much nuance and so much like I like to talk about like where in my mouth I'm feeling it. And for me, it's like it's a light feeling up here, like it comes up this way. It's not the earthy deep down, and it's not so it's up here, but it's not that like I'm not drinking a barrel, but
yeah,
I'm
licking
not.
the inside of
Yeah,
a barrel, right?
yeah. Like that's not, and that to me was it's just so well balanced in that. So that's why I appreciate in the name, like the name to what you get on the inside.
Well, that's quite a compliment. I mean, that's awesome. It was, I generally like to use the oak to add and build initial sweetness, but more so for the viscosity
Mm,
and kind of weight that it adds. Um, and really do everything I can to to get that before we get into that kind of over oaked, tannic,
yeah,
bitter, waxy kind of situation. So the idea is to kind of use that to build before it goes too far. And I'll admit that a lot of the kind of trial and error, um, some trials or some trials and a lot of errors, to kind of figure the program out for 2XO were done as I was kind of building out this massive inventory for Kentucky Owl. And um, you double barrel too early, a lot of bad things happen. You double
yeah,
barrel too late, a lot of bad things happen. You obviously stay in the barrel too long, a lot of bad things happen. You use too light a char, and bad things can happen. So there's kind of been a recipe to kind of developing how you get the things that we're really looking for without going to that place where it's, over oak whiskey for me, every time I taste it, it's like, I feel like there's something I need to scrape off my tongue, like,
For
and,
me, I'm a neat whiskey drinker, but when I hit a over oak, that's when I need an ice cube. It's like
got it.
I need it to help like distill that a little bit. But it's so funny what you just said because I've been working on a game for the Pour More website and audience that's basically the Oregon Trail, but for whiskey making. It's
Mhm.
like you get to pick like what level of char, where you want the barrel to be, what your like some kind of mash bill rough, and then it's gonna take you through a couple of years. And every year you get to make like a choice. Like, are you going to move it in the rick house? Are you going to do this? And then it's like, oh, tornado hit. Good.
Oh, you died from
Dead.
cholera.
Right.
Yeah.
So a whole game you could play in like 30 to 45 seconds and just have fun with it. But you're like, oh, tornado hit. Oh, lightning strike. Like all these kind of historical problems that have hit. So it's so funny you said that 'cause I'm like, I'm almost done with this game that I've been building. Like, this is exactly what it is. Like,
That
how
sounds
long
awesome,
how long
actually.
can you
So
play it until you're like, all right, I see kind of how to make it work. And the parts part for me is like, what is the end game? Because the point is not that longer whiskey, older whiskey is better. That's not always the case, right? Like older, some you just got to find the right spot. So sometimes it's just a matter of like play it for a couple cycles, get some tasting notes back, and be like, that's when I want to bottle it. I'm done. I got some points on it, and then my thought was you would submit it to a board to see what kind of like gold, platinum, or whatever you might get. Completely arbitrary, but we'll see how the scoring goes. But it's not to say that if you make it to 10 years, you get a great one. You might get a great one in 4 years, but like you got to find
uh,
that level.
I love it. The Oregon Trail of whiskey. That is
Oregon
that
Trail
is
whiskey. I was like, I had that thought, and I was like, this is kind of a fun idea, and so I built a prototype for it and shared with a few friends to get some feedback on it. And it's a game you can play in under a minute, so it's just you can play it over and over again. So
that's awesome. That's hilarious. It's it's kind of like I remember all one of the things that I feel very fortunate about is the kind of the relationships that I had prior to that campfire conversation, when in the end afforded me that. We were this kind of Kentucky staple. So even back when bourbon wasn't a thing, when all of these companies would bring in their people, they'd always bring them to the end, and so um, it's very. I've I've known Mr. Rutledge my entire life, and you know Jim and Al, forever, and Mr. Van Winkle and the Russells and the Samuels and um, yeah, a lot of them, and but it was always the things that you pick up and take from them, and it's kind of like it makes me think of the Oregon Trail game, and I mean, remember that Jimmy Russell used to say that your whiskey would develop like this, it would just get better
Mhm.
and better and better and better, but then the decline
Ah,
is as soon as it turns, it's a much it falls off a cliff. And he said, if you're looking for here and you're somewhere in here, don't mess around, get it in the bottle.
get it
That's
out.
what he'd
Yeah,
say. He'd
yeah.
say, and it's just kind of like, you never know when the tornado is going to strike,
Right.
or
Yeah.
somebody's coming down with cholera, or whatever.
Or the barrel turns right and
Yeah,
takes
you're
that
run
one
over by a
moment and
buffalo, all
yeah,
those things.
yeah. Or flood. I mean, the floods that were so terrible last year. I actually was in Kentucky when that happened. We were like, oh, this is a lot of rain, and everyone's like, it's a lot of rain. And then
Oh yeah.
we saw those pictures of obviously flooding. That was insane. We were there for that. That was a weird time to be there, but um, yeah, you just never know. You never know what's gonna happen. So get it out and drink it. Don't leave it in the bottle. Don't leave it in the barrel.
Right, right,
Well,
right.
Dixon, I appreciate your time. We've had a great time. My last question I like to ask is, if you're not drinking your stuff, and you have a lot of things to drink, but if you're not drinking yours, what do you love to drink? It could be someone else's whiskey, it could be anything else you want. What are you drinking?
Yeah, I mean, I'm an equal opportunity, but Well, the two things, and it really goes back to the two people that I think were so good to me, and that's why I have such an affinity for them. I mean, if you came to my house and said, "Hey, what do you got that's not yours that you're interested in?" I'm a big I've always been a big Four Roses guy,
Yeah.
and part of that is because no one was better to me and helped me more than Mr. Rutledge. And we've worked together on some things, and I just have an affinity for what I think is a very unique approach that he created there. And then I bet if we went around and counted them up, I've got 300 or so private selection single barrel Four Roses. So there's always some of that, and then I just love the Russell's Reserve. So
Mm.
I've probably got quite a few of those, and so I think if you said, "What are you drinking that's not yours?" I'd probably end up pouring you either a Four Roses or a Russell's.
How big is the Dedman family private reserve? How many bottles you got?
I would say that if lightning struck and it caught on fire, we'd see it from space. So is that
Good enough. Good enough. I have a friend here in town who is also in the business, but also has been many picked Four Roses for many years, and so he also has a gigantic collection of his Four Roses picks for various people. So it's I love to see it. So in the Four Roses lingo, do you have a four-letter designation that's your favorite?
so? It was funny because when we used to go back and forth on it, and this, I'm not well. I was always OESK. I
Yeah.
just love the kind of creamy red fruit with a little bit of spice. Um, and and Jim knew that, but Jim is an OBSK guy. He loves
That's what I
the
am. I'm OBSK.
he's the OBSK guy, and so it'd be
I'm a
great.
high ride kind of guy. Yeah.
I mean, I would show up and say, "Mr. Ellis, could you taste some of this stuff?" And he was like, "Yeah." But while you're here, do you care to taste some of this stuff? And I was like, "Absolutely." Twist my arm, sir.
Yeah.
But OESK, and then I do the number two would be the OBSO. Those
BSO.
would be
Okay. Got it.
that
Well,
was.
yeah. Well, thank you. I mean, I'm taking a lot of your time. I really
Oh
appreciate
my
you spending
gosh.
on. Again, we sent out. Here's the bottle that was sent out to our Bourbon Explorer members from 2XO. We're going to have other conversations later in the year. But Dixon, anything else you want to say? Anything else you want to plug or anything coming up?
Well, I just said, first and for thank you, like genuinely thank you. This is I mean, it's an honor, it's a pleasure, it's a privilege. I certainly do appreciate it. Whether it's through the 2XO Instagram or my Instagram, it's Dixon underscore Dedman or Dixon at 2XOwhiskey.com. I mean, if there's anything that we can do or want to do, or anybody has any questions or whatever, I certainly appreciate, this opportunity and you sharing with your team, and would love to do some more, and it's just it's not lost on me. I really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. We appreciate it. And hopefully we can kill at least one bottle during May, and
Mhm.
maybe we'll connect on that when we get there.
Yeah, good luck
But
with that. Good
yeah.
luck with the
We're partnering with Bourbon of the Week, the Instagram account Bourbon of the Week, and he does this every year. Bottle Kill May, and so this year is going to be a massacre May for us. So we're
I
going to
love
kill a
it.
bunch of
I love it.
bottles.
That's fantastic.
So thank you. Have a great weekend, and thank you for your time.
You do the same. Appreciate
All
it.
right. Thanks
Talk
all.
soon. Yes,
Bye.
sir.